with the ideology. So it looks like quite difficult. But many Western countries believe that China will become the democratized country, but now it looks like something's wrong. So do you think in near future those confrontations can be resolved basically?
When Malaysia became independent, we decided that we will only have relations with countries with the same system of government, same democratic system that we have. And therefore we had no relation with communist countries. But later on we found that this was not giving us any good result. We decided not to care about the system of government. We just want to establish relations with countries, forgetting about differences of ideology. That must be the attitude of the whole world. Forget about the ideologies of each country. Don't try to force a regime change, because as you can see, a regime change has resulted in more destruction, more killing than without the change. So we have to tolerate other people's system, good relation, and through good relation, they will change. For example, China has changed. China of Mao Zedong is not the same as China of Deng Xiaoping or the present regime. The present regime is much more open than the past. They even allow their people to travel all over the world. So we have, in a way, we have influenced China to change, not by confrontation, by exhibiting that the system of open trade is much more beneficial than closed trade and restricted trade. And that has made tremendous progress. And I think over time, we will learn from each other. We'll take what is good from the West, and we'll take what is good from the East, and somehow find a way, a middle way that will be good for everyone.
So what could the United States give up something? Do you have any idea? Yeah.
The United States prospered because most of the American companies invested in countries, poorer countries where the cost is lower, and that includes China. Many United States companies are operating in China, in Malaysia, and in other countries, basically to produce the components and parts that goes into the products of the United States. And because of that, the United States product become competitive in the world. But if all these parts, all these industries are located in the United States, the cost would be prohibitive, and the products of the United States will not be able to compete with the products of Eastern countries. This happened when Japan first showed that Japan could produce all those kitchen appliances at a lower cost, and we push out all the product of the West, and even motor cars. Japan was able to compete with the West because of Japanese work ethics and perhaps lower wages in the first place. But if the United States wants to do everything in the United States, the cost would be prohibitive and the products will be not competitive. However, there are certain areas where the United States will excel. We know that they build fantastic airplanes, for example. Their engineering capability, their skills are very, very high. And this they have to be the reason why they can compete in the world. Don't try and compete in areas like making kitchen appliances and all that to sell to the world. Each part of the world must learn what is its principal strength and concentrate on that, and not try to compete in areas where really it cannot excel. Today, Malaysia exports a lot of components. We have a positive balance of trade with the United States, but that is mainly due to American companies producing parts and components in Malaysia for export to the United States to be included in products of the United States.
Yeah, as you said, now the supply chain is very complicated, and a lot of nations are involved. So, but for example, now the United States now ban the Huawei products, to buy it, but also don't allow the U.S. company to sell the components to the Huawei. And it's also involved a lot of the Asian companies who supply the components to the Huawei. It might include a Malaysian company probably. But how do you think this policy will be effective or not?
Well, there will be ups and downs. At one time, somebody may be more competitive in one field, but less competitive in other fields. At another time, there can be a change. For example, today, the East has learned all about research and development. So it is no longer a question of copying products from the West. Initially, they copied products from the West, but they then produced better products, and their research enabled them to produce even better products. In the telephone field, for example, Korea, Japan, and China spend much more money on research and development than probably Europe and the US. And therefore, they have improved on the products. The world must accept that that is a capability of the East as much as before we expected everything from the West. Now it is coming from the East. Now what the West should do is to accept the products of the East in that field and try to excel in their own way. If not in that field, but find other areas where you have some competitive advantage.
But how to build the win-win situation with China is also important for every country. And since you came back as a prime minister, you negotiate some project with China. And but also when you were in Beijing recently, you met some executive like Huawei or since time. Those companies now US regarded some kind of dangerous company. But so how the Malaysia can work with China in that regard, a win-win situation?
Well, in the past we regard America as a dangerous company because they have superior military capabilities. They can force people to do regime change. If you don't, we'll punish you. Yeah, but now China has excelled in one particular field, in scientific research. The US must compete with China. But at times China will win, at other times the US will win. The US has got good capability to do research and development in the past. They must accept that that capability can also be found in the East. But you want to have a situation in which you are always ahead. If you are not ahead, I will ban you. I will send warships to your country. That is not competition. That is threatening people. That is not the approach that we should use. Yes, I understand Huawei has got tremendous advance over American technology even. Normally, when a country develops missiles to attack another country, that other country develops defense capability to stop the missile. And then the missiles are improved so that they can penetrate the defense system, and the defense country then improve their defense system. This is a competition which goes on in the field of military capability, and it is a waste of money. It is better to talk to each other and stop this confrontative kind of... we have to accept that the US cannot forever be the supreme nation in the world that can have the best technology in the world. Today, the best technology in the world that is found in the US is actually due to research by a lot of Asians who have migrated there. These same Asians in their own country can do the same. So sometimes there is competition, but the competition, if sometimes the East wins, that's okay. But going to war is not a solution because you destroy everything, you kill people, you are very primitive. You don't like somebody, you go and shoot him. That's not the way to solve problems.
Yeah, Malaysia, my understanding, Malaysia has been investigated some potential risk of the Huawei equipment, but the result hasn't been announced yet. But do you think Malaysia should do the same way, same as other country, or you are more open?
We are too small to have an effect on a huge company like Huawei, whose research is far bigger than the whole of Malaysia's research capability. So we try to make use of their technology as much as possible. Yes, there may be some spying, but what is there to spy in Malaysia? We are an open book. Everybody knows. If any country wants to invade Malaysia, they can walk through and we will not resist. Because it's a waste of time.
Yeah, but you mentioned some like negotiations story. So to try to avoid like one nation, some lawful activity with the regional trade framework is also important. And Malaysia have been participating in the CPTPP from the beginning, and also now ASEAN is discussing about RCEP. But Malaysia are a bit cautious and haven't ratified the CPTPP and look like just so the situation. So could we expect Malaysia would move further, or you still take some time?
You know, in the past, what happened was that out of the West, out of America, came ideas like free trade, borderless world, and all that. All these things came from rich countries, and they then tried to impose it on the rest of the world, including poor countries. But I noticed that in the case of One Belt, One Road, everybody is called to China to discuss what would it be like. So the countries like Malaysia or even Brunei with 300,000 people were there to talk about what we can have from One Belt, One Road. So in the end, that system has now been modified because the countries that will be affected are also part of the planning and the setting up of the agreement. Whereas in the past, the Trans-Pacific Partnership was cooked up in Washington, and then we are told we must accept that. That is not the way for the world to reach agreement on any system. If there is a system to be introduced, any change in the system, then the whole world should be asked to sit down and talk about the changes of the new system and develop with the consent of all the stakeholders.
So you differ, during your speech, you differ that we need some kind of the forum, a bit different, probably the existing one, or a bit different from the United Nations. It is almost same kind. You differ in past, like East Asian Economic Caucus. Could you elaborate more? What kind of forum you are thinking about?
Well, in the first place, we were watching the European Union. The European Union was too far ahead, too fast. They even decided to have a common currency. That is very disruptive, because countries are not at the same level of development, and each country has got its currency that is of different values. So in the Far East, if we want to come together, we should start with a common trading currency, not to be used locally, but for the purpose of settling of trade. And that currency can be used to evaluate the value of trade, from export from this country to that country and this country to that country, based on a certain currency belonging to East Asia. Then, of course, there will be fairness. At the moment, we have to depend upon the US dollar, but the US dollar is also not stable. So the currency that we propose should be based on gold, because gold is much more stable. And if we use that currency to evaluate the export or the imports of the countries, then we can make settlements using that currency. Now, that currency must relate to the local currency as to the exchange rate. That is something that can be related to the performance of that country. That way, we know how much we owe, we know how much we have to pay in the special currency of East Asia. Maybe it can be extended also to the rest of the country. But what we are seeing today is that we are tied to the US currency, and there is manipulation of currency, not due to performance of the economy. Just because one country is affected, you say, well, there is infection to the other countries. Malaysia was very stable. Way back in 1997, it was a very stable country. But because of the problem in Thailand, they said that we must affect Malaysia also. And what happened? The currency traders sold Malaysian currency down, and the value of the Malaysian currency depreciated. It is not even the money that they have. They never had any Malaysian currency. But nevertheless, they were able to sell huge quantities of Malaysian currency, and when it is depressed, then of course they can buy and sell it at a higher price when it comes up. This currency trading is not something that is healthy, because it's not about the performance of companies. It's about manipulation. Anything that you have in oversupply will lose value. Anything that is short of supply will increase value. So they sell huge quantities of money they don't have, and because the amount is so big, there is depression of the value.
Yeah, recently the U.S. Treasury Department included Malaysia, the one country of the a potential currency manipulator. So the idea of the East Asian, some common trading currency is related to that?
No, not at all. I mean, this is the problem. If any country is to be downgraded or upgraded, it should be done by some international uncommitted forum, not by any country. But the US is fond of labeling that country as no good, this country is no good, you have to do business only in that country in this way. If you are not democratic, then we are going to... that is not for any single power to decide. If we want to live in a united world, a stable world, we must resort to stability through agreement between all nations that have a stake in that problem.
But you refer some potential currency, the East Asia. But in East Asia, also Japan tried to promote the yen, and China also tried to promote the renminbi, some more common, the trading currency. But do you think it doesn't work? So the East Asia, including some image, ASEAN plus Japan, South Korea, China, what kind of image do you have?
No, if we try to promote our own national currency, there will be conflict. But if we have a common currency for East Asia, a common trading currency, not one that is used in the country, but for the purpose of settlement of trade only, then there will be stability. But trying to promote the yen or the yuan, that is not the way to go.
Okay, yeah, this is quite interesting. There's some proposal, but sorry that we are done with enough time. So one thing, before taking some questions, I have to ask one thing, because it has been 1 year since you are seeing the Prime Minister in Malaysia, and there have been a lot of change. And recently also you said, if the people saw some change, some kind of some frustration, and also people has to be a bit patient. But do you think why some people who enthusiastically supported you now are a bit hesitant, especially the Malay people now are a bit hesitant, and some opposition use this kind of the trend and criticize the government? How do you see that?
But the previous government was fond of giving free money to people. Everybody gets free money. If you are a bachelor, you get $450 a month. If you are a fisherman, you get $300 a month. They were given money for doing nothing. But now that we have taken over, and we have to carry this burden of debt, huge debt, we don't have money. We cannot be giving free money to people. And we don't give free money to people, then the people do not like us. But it has to be done. There is no way we can correct the financial problem without being very careful, prudent in the management of the finances of the country. So some of these people before supported us thinking that when we take over, they had nothing to lose. But initially, they will lose the kind of free money that was given by the previous government, which in fact stole the money and gave. We want to correct this. A country where the people depends upon the government for free money will never grow. But a country where the people work hard to create wealth, that country will prosper. Now the mindset of the people of the country has been changed by the previous government to become dependent on the government. We don't want people to be dependent on the government. We want them to have jobs. We'll create jobs for them. They earn money, and when they earn money, then the government also will have enough wealth, because they will generate wealth through working for their companies. Their companies will pay corporate tax, the government will have money. Then we'll pay our debts, and then we can look into how to create more jobs for our people. The best countries in the world are where the people are hardworking, and they, through their work, creates more wealth for the country.
Thank you very much. So probably we can take the 1 or 2 questions from the floor. If you have any questions, please raise a hand. 質問がある方は
If you have any question, please indicate it by raising your hand. When you raise your hand, please keep raising your hand so that the microphone will be given to you. Please make your question succinct.
Thank you very much, Tun.
I thank you very much for your very stimulating keynote speech, as well as very good discussion with Ms. Watanabe. You were emphasizing that we have to think about the new world order. And at the same time, you were saying and appealing the role to be played by United Nations. But while 2 big giants are fighting against each other at this moment, I think ASEAN has to be united furthermore. When we look at the ASEAN leaders' stances, they differ very much from one to the other. And some are very much, what shall I say, trying to challenge the more or less hegemonic or muscled stance of China. And some others are much more lenient to China. My question is, you are saying very positive way about the future of ASEAN, but for the future of Asia, ASEAN has to be united. But their stances vis-a-vis China is quite different. And what is your forecast, or what is your outlook of the future, in the near future, of ASEAN and this Asia for the peace and stability of the region? Thank you.
Well, if you make a comparison between ASEAN and many other regional organization, you will have to admit that ASEAN has survived through the ages, and that survival is due to our ability to talk and discuss things with each other. We don't confront each other, we don't go to war with each other, not anymore. That is the secret of ASEAN's survivability. So that is a very important factor. And we, of course, face problem with an emerging China that is very aggressive because it's become very rich. But we can deal with China. For example, when we had agreement with a contract with China that is not to our advantage, we negotiated with China and reduced the contract value so that it is not detrimental to our own financial situation. The problem is that while the world, the big powers in the world talk about the rule of law, but they are not obeying the rule of law. The rule of international law must be obeyed by everyone, including the United States, including China, including Europe, including Asia. If we go by the rule of international law, there will be no conflicts. But the problem that we face now is that while China exerts its new strength, it should be settled by adhering to international law and having conferences to discuss. But instead you send warships there as to show confrontation, to exert your authority. And you do that There might be incidents, and when there is a small incident, as I said, in Sarajevo, because of the killing of the Ferdinand, it resulted in World War. Do we want to see in the South China Sea an accident in which the U.S. clashed with some Chinese warships, and that flares up into a war which will destroy Japan, Korea, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia? That is not what we want to see. We want to see reasonable, responsible countries sit down around a table and discuss problems. How do we deal with China, a strong China which is very rich? Because China has got money, of course it will want to use money. In the past, Western countries had power and they colonized the whole world. I don't think China aims to colonize the whole world because it would be detrimental to the development of China.
Thank you very much. And we are running the time, and there are some hands. But also we got some already submitted some questions. So I pick out one, and it be the last question. These are some questions from the attendants. So I heard maybe the next year you will step down as a prime minister. But what is the things you have to clear before handing the baton to Mr. Anwar Ibrahim? And do you have any time framework of the transition?
Well, during the formation of the opposition coalition, it was agreed that the coalition should be led by me as its chairman. But we also undertake that my term, if I do become prime minister, it will be limited to a certain time. But the actual time is not spelled out. But I have agreed that Anwar will take over from me, and I will adhere to my agreement. But of course, there may be some opposition to this undertaking by me. That is other people's problem. It's not my problem. My problem, my undertaking is I will step down after a certain number of time for me to put back the economy in order.
What is the biggest challenge for the Malaysian economy now?
We need to reduce the borrowings to a certain level where our money, the government's money, can be used for a lot of development that is needed.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I assume that you have the still art, but I'm quite sorry. We have also the another speakers. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Mahathir, and please give him the huge